What we thought we would do, with your permission, is to in fact have a very open question and answer session on anything that we've discussed over the past 2 days that you didn't have time to ask at the time, or on anything else related to business continuity in the Middle East that you wished we had covered in the past 2 days and we haven't, or indeed on anything else that you think might be interesting to the audience, or which is a burning question to you right at the moment. So there's a pretty wide set of topics for our distinguished panel. While you're all thinking about that, I'd like to open with something that's perhaps a little more light-hearted. Our audit friends just left us. I know auditors like a good joke, but Rolf, I think, has gone already. Mahmoud, you need to be prepared for this one, okay? So I'd like you to give some thought to movies, okay? Which movie, in your opinion, most represents business continuity in the Middle East, or business continuity generally? If we had to pick a movie to watch today that says this movie encompasses business continuity, which would that be? Now, I'm going to start. Mahmoud is then going to answer in Arabic his choice of movie that represents business continuity. And then I'm going to turn to my colleagues here. For me, and of course I've had a day to think about this, which is terribly unfair, for me it would be Mission Impossible, or the Mission Impossible series. Firstly, because clearly I look like Tom Cruise. Yeah, I am Tom Cruise, yeah. I notice that all the men are going, and the women are, okay. I look like Tom Cruise. But Mission Impossible, you think about what we're asked to do sometimes. You're going to look at the whole organisation, you're going to assess all the risks, you're going to protect everything, you're going to keep everybody happy, but I'm not going to give you any money, and I'm not going to let you talk to anybody who's important. But please go away and do it, and could you finish it in a week? Yeah? Is that a fair description of some business continuity programs? So for me, Mission Impossible. Mahmoud? Oh, we need a microphone, sorry.
Do you believe we have a cinema? We don't have movies. We don't have cinema in our Arabic countries. So there is no BCM movies.
Oh, okay.
This is my point of view.
My apologies. What about a song then? What song would encompass it that our friends would?
Chris, you mentioned Mission Impossible. No comparison between Mission Impossible and any other movie.
No. Okay. John, what about you? What movie is it for you? Or Khalid? No?
I don't have something in my mind, to be frank. So.
I started with too hard a question. Okay, John.
Well, I don't have one either, but it would be nice to have a bit of time to prep for that. But I suppose typically it would be some sort of mystery-type thriller movie, if I could think of one off the top of my head, purely because BCM, certainly in my experience, has always been full of surprises.
Fair point. Full of surprises, difficult to plan, but we get there in the end, and we always get the bad guys, don't we? The good guy always wins at the end. Jolly good. John, while you've got the microphone, you're a practitioner in this region. We talked yesterday about the new Abu Dhabi standard, AE 7000. What do you think that will look like? I don't mean in terms of the standard, in terms of implementing it, the challenges for companies in this region, and what kind of support do you think organisations will need to help them implement that new standard in this area?
Okay, I think one of the interesting things about that standard in particular is that it, when it was designed, it had a focus on capability and being able to demonstrate capability as well as going through the fundamental life cycle that we all know and love. In terms of the region, and I'm not going to talk about any specific countries, but in terms of the region, some of the challenges I think are more going to be infrastructural type challenges. In UK, Europe, US, and to some extent the Far East as well, we've got a very mature business continuity and recovery environment. We've got a lot of suppliers that provide services that can help organizations complete the implementation, and I don't just mean from a consultancy point of view, but also IT disaster recovery providers, workspace recovery providers as well. We have the necessary telecoms infrastructure to support recovery profiles, whether it be data telecommunication or voice telecommunications. And within the region, there are not just cultural type issues, but there are also practices that make it very difficult as well. For example, heavy dependency upon GSM networks for communication and a lack of use of landlines in a lot of countries. So that places a lot of strain and dependency upon the GSM network. And if that's not available, communication becomes extremely difficult. In terms of developments within the industry, we've seen a lot of developments taking place about cloud-based services, software as a service. Within the region, that's very difficult. From a cultural perspective, there's a lot of guarding and security around systems and data, and therefore a reluctance to perhaps use some of those cloud-based services. And also, once again, the infrastructure supporting the bandwidth and allowing those services to be used. So I think those predominantly are the challenges that we're going to see going forward. How do we overcome them? Well, I think there's been a lot of development over the last year or so with the completion of the submarine cabling into the Gulf region and the connectivity for a lot of the Gulf countries to that submarine cable. That's going to have future benefits in terms of communications bandwidth and allowing internet-based services to develop, so long as the telcos in each of the countries within the region can develop their local infrastructures and take benefits with a lot of the next generation network technology that, in fairness, has most probably been implemented over the last 6 or 7 years in the US, Europe, and some of the Far Eastern countries. So that will make a marked difference. The standard helps enormously, I think, to set a benchmark within the region and give something to help provide additional advice and guidance. And it would be fantastic to see a number of other countries in the region either adopt it or take it on board and tailor it for their local environments and make it specific to the individual countries.
Thank you. Yeah. Khalid?
I totally agree with what he has said, but I think we need to build it's a good start to have the UAE standard. I mean, it is a great initiative, however, it's need to put in the right context. You know, GCC, we still have, most of the GCC country has an infrastructure issue. So there will be a lot of single point of failure in terms of communication, in terms of the power, as well suppliers and all this. Having the standard in its own cannot be adopted in other GCC unless it's go online with a good context of infrastructure, so you can really build on it. So, as it's a good start, okay? The future could be better, I mean, in terms of investing more in all GCC country to build a better infrastructure in terms of communication and, you know, power as well. I did visit, I think, 4 weeks ago, was searching for a DR center, and we have like very shortage in the all GCC country in terms of a state-of-the-art data center capability, and there is very, very few competitive in the market, and I think it's a great opportunity for investment for all investors. I mean, if this is the direction and start building, you know, compared to what we have seen in Europe and North America, I think the growth of the BCM will be much better. I mean, but in absence of the right context, I don't think there will be a big improvement unless we build the right context, which is infrastructure, communication, and power as well.
Sure.
Yeah, that's outset. I think it's a bit ironic that someone who's not part of the region is sitting on the panel. But from our experience, I think CORE has been operating in this geography for about 3 years now. We've been seeing the growth in terms of the interest in business continuity management in this region for the last 3 years. And we have seen a very steady increase in terms of the awareness to have a business continuity management system in place. Now, having said that, I believe there is certainly a knowledge gap which needs to be filled, and there is probably a huge commitment from the government to ensure that the financial services sector is well protected from outages. But still, again, I think it's probably only the government sector and probably the finance sector that is being targeted. There is a lot more outside these two sectors, probably trading one huge sector in this geography. I'm not sure what could be the philosophy for handling a business continuity management initiative with this sector. So I think the competencies need to be built. That is one huge gap which I see. Two, probably the language issues will have to be probably handled. And in fact, in one of the studies made by BCI, they have actually mentioned that Middle East is probably one of the growth sector as far as BCM is concerned. But yes, probably an Arabization of the entire process would really help in taking off speed in this region, plus building the competencies and ensuring probably I heard that some of the people from government sector speaking about lack of support and lack of political will from the top to ensure that whatever the BC practitioners are doing get the necessary support. In terms of resources, there may not be a lack of resource, but it is a lack of will to ensure that it is probably implemented in the whole spirit of the whole thing.
How do we encourage that political will? One of the things I interestingly was going to come on to, which you've started to talk about, was what do people from this conference want to see happen? What would help them move the business continuity agenda forwards? Are there things that Diraj can pursue? Are there things that the BCI can pursue? Are there so political will is quite a broad topic. Do you think there are specific things that organisations like the BCI can do to help get that political will?
As I said, one of the things is Arabization, implementing the whole thing in the local language will go a long way in ensuring that more and more people come into the stream. In fact, the lack of the language itself makes people probably shy away from this because everything is in a corporate language and things like that. That one. And second thing is continuous learning. Getting competencies built in the internal systems of the organization would again help the organization build a steady stream of people. Even with attrition, probably people can move from one organization to other, but they can go on implement systems there with the experience that they gain. Third is, as I said, the top management support. There has to be as much seriousness in even government organizations to ensure that people down the line mean something to the betterment of the organization. And if that support is there, I think everything will be in place.
Okay, that's good. I'll take some of that away. Be interested if people have thoughts to add to that.
Sorry, Chris, just one quick thing. Talking to Lorraine yesterday, she made a very interesting point about the new BCI good practice guidelines that are going to be published, I believe, around about Business Continuity Awareness Week next year, and that there should be an Arabic version available of those.
Arabic, yeah, GPG 2013 into Arabic, good. While you've got the mic, John, we talked a lot about supply chain risks, supply chain vulnerabilities, and again, in your experience, how many of you have clients, that they have suppliers. How many of those suppliers do you think get this? I mean, it's been hard enough for big organisations to get a handle on it. How many suppliers do you think actually get this business continuity idea and how big a challenge do you think that is? To put a scale on it, at Qatar Airways, we think there are more than 20,000 suppliers. Some are very big, like Boeing, who absolutely get it. And there are some who provide, say, our web gateways and our payment gateways, who seem to be looking blankly, and yet they're international organisations themselves, and yet don't seem to even understand the language that we're talking. So how big a challenge do you think that is?
Enormous. Bottom line, I think, is if they're global players, they get it. Suppliers within the local environments, they understand it, but won't do anything about it unless they're really pushed. From my experience, which is predominantly Oman, business continuity is in place within the financial services sector, but predominantly the banks, so the local banks and the foreign banks operating within Oman, and also the oil and gas sector, where business continuity is really developed out of the need for crisis management and health and safety. But those are the two main industry sectors that have business continuity and have had it for a while, and over the last 12 to 18 months, it's started to spread to some of the other industries, like the utilities sector, for example. There isn't a big drive, and unless there is, a lot of the suppliers are not going to take it on board, because for them it's a cost. Yeah. If they don't have clients requesting it and demanding it, why should they implement it?
But again, if we come back to the Arabization and to the political will, that might help solve some of that. Khalid?
Just briefly, I mean, I remember the last communication, because we do this on an annual basis, we sent to the supply chain or suppliers to just inform them that it is good to have the business continuity standard, and whether this is part of their plan or they already got it, and imagine the percentage of people who get business continuity standard is under 5%. So I sent to 100 and I got like only 4 who got the standard.
4?
Yes.
Right. It's not a big percentage, is it? No. Seshadri?
Yeah, I think as a philosophy, I think Middle East has really woken up to the need and the importance of business continuity. That would be my surmise. But the building blocks have to be put in place for them to reach there. I would probably think in the next couple of years that should be there, and once the local competence is built and the political will is there and language support is available, and probably more such roadshows are kept to increase awareness among the business BCM practitioners to go out and spread the word around. I'm sure Middle East is almost reaching there.
I think in the USA and in the UK, it probably took government legislation to help get that drive, which I guess is what we're talking about as political will. In the UK, it was the Civil Contingencies Act, which mandated business continuity for local authorities, for emergency services and so on. And I think that made them then ask questions of suppliers. I forget which regulation name it was in the USA, but again, out of FEMA, I think that was the same. It made people think about it and made them ask the right questions down the chain. Perhaps that's a future development for the Gulf.
As he mentioned also, the question here, what we are going to do with it. I mean, he mentioned that unless you push them, they will not make any change. And I think as an organization, we should have a plan to reduce this, gap as much as we can. And part of what we do, I mean, when we do this such analysis, we have to report the finding to the board of directors. And then we say, these are the companies that we are doing business with. And only those are the 4 or 5 who do have a business continuity standard. And we classify those. Then we said, okay, what is the strategy? Do you want us to replace them and look for a new company who do have the standard? If the answer is yes, then we should go and, said, thank you very much. Okay, this is a note for the next year. You will not have a chance we will not renew the contract with you unless you have a plan, okay, and submit it that you are going to obtain the business continuity and you know, put it as part of your strategy. If the board said, no, you cannot change this company, then we'll say, okay, fine. Then you have to accept the risk. So tomorrow, if there is any disruption or incident, and this organization is failed to deliver, then this is risk you have been accepted, then you have to deal with it.
So without some action, asking the question almost doesn't matter, you mean? Unless we're going to do something with the answers about, do our suppliers know about business continuity and are they prepared? If we're not going to take any action for the companies that don't have it, we might as well not know, in a sense. John, sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, a lot of it needs to be led through the procurement process. You know, what criteria is being used to actually work with these suppliers? Are we working just on what the cost is? Are we looking at the quality of the service? Are we looking at the resilience of the organisation and their ability to continue to provide not only the service but to the level and the quality that we want going forward? And my gut feeling, and it's no more than that, is that we are most probably still in the early stages of being still heavily focused on a cost-based selection process for suppliers, but in the process of transitioning away from that, where there are a number of organisations that are looking at wider aspects, but predominantly it's based on cost. And therefore, unless we can include some of this other criteria, and it's not just business continuity, it's a raft of other things as well. You know, we have to be looking at value for money, we have to be looking at quality, we have to be looking at how long these suppliers are going to be around for, the type of partnership arrangement they want with the organisation, you know, to establish long-term relationships, to understand the business, the demand, the requirement, and how their services fit in. And unless we can include that criteria within the procurement process as well, then we are always going to struggle.
So there's an opportunity there to engage more with our procurement functions to help educate them in that way, yeah? To look for different things other than money. That there's risk management capability, financial management capability in the supply chain. Okay. Any questions from any of the audience about these things or about anything else that we have touched on over the past day? Nothing at the moment. Let's carry on then. In the sense of learning from good examples and good case studies, are you able to share with us a good crisis management scenario that you've run, and why was it good? How did it get the results that you wanted? Yeah. So when you're training your crisis team or your emergency team, what was a good scenario that you used that got a good result from that team and help them learn about the process of business continuity and of crisis response?
I think there are real life scenarios happening in the Middle East.
Oh well, real life
you do not
ones.
Need to create one. All around the Middle East, I think things are happening, and I think these are probably more than created scenarios. I think the responses to these will give a real lifelike responses to the people. And these will probably teach them lessons as to how to build your own protective shell around you. I'm sure certain things that are happening around may be beyond even your crisis management capabilities. I don't know how you are going to build crisis management capabilities. This is not applicable to just Middle East, but everywhere. We can only plan for certain eventualities. Beyond that, I think, inshallah, we leave it to sabr. So, but whatever has been happening around in the Middle East, I think is a real eye-opener that things can happen here also. I think from these, if you are able to take a leap and build our defensive mechanisms, I think that could be a great starting point.
I think, just to conclude, we deal with different teams, okay? Starting from crisis management team, which is a more centralized team on the company. The incident management team is more localized. So Riyadh has its own team, Bahrain has its own team, Jeddah has its own team, every city, because you cannot deal with the crisis unless you are a local. That's because you see exactly what's happening, what type of resources is there, what type of damage assessment you need to do. So we had like a real crisis, okay, and during the demonstration in Bahrain, and where we closed our office for around 4 weeks. So we keep like giving guidelines to the staff, communication regularly about, I think, just to conclude, we deal with different teams, okay? Starting from crisis management team, which is a more centralized team on the company. The incident management team is more localized. So Riyadh has its own team, Bahrain has its own team, Jeddah has its own team, every city, because you cannot deal with the crisis unless you are a local. That's because you see exactly what's happening, what type of resources is there, what type of damage assessment you need to do. So we had like a real crisis, okay, and during the demonstration in Bahrain, and where we closed our office for around 4 weeks. So we keep like giving guidelines to the staff, communication regularly about what they should be doing, what they should not doing. We moved the team, the critical functions, to other city to continue working from Jeddah. So there was many scenarios, okay, some people travel to their home country until the situation has been back to normal. So we had a plan, a crisis management plan in place, and it was really a success story. Okay, the other one was explode, the sprinkler on the office. It was flooded the entire offices, and we managed effectively also to invoke the plan, and also send the communication through SMS and email to the staff, so they didn't come to the office next morning. And we also invoked the incident management team and the business recovery team to go directly to the alternate site and continue working within, next morning. And it was very good, experience. However, as mentioned, okay, incident can be managed. Crisis, there is no guarantee that you have a full-fledged, effective management for crisis, okay? And this depends on the type of crisis. We know all what's happened in Japan, okay? It was like tsunami, earthquake, different things. And in spite of all, the facility they have and in business continuity, they couldn't, survive. It was a true disaster. So you cannot plan for everything. However, as mentioned, you can reduce the impact and be ready and be prepared in terms of your team, your facility, your plan. But still, there will be some situation which is out of control. You cannot deal with it.
And you're saying you've shared the results of those real incidents with the rest of the company to tell them what happened, what went well, how they might learn from that to be prepared themselves.
Actually, after each incident, there is a lesson learned. We document these things, and it goes directly as an issue, and we rank it, classify it whether it's high risk or low risk or medium risk, and it became automatically part of our risk mitigation and corrective or preventive action. So this is a real, things that if you want always to make progress and improvement, you should learn from your mistake. And you take this from whether it is a crisis or incident or even test or exercise, because any issues you find, in a normal situation, it will help you to, improve, okay, and be ready for when it's become reality. So this is one of the aspects, is to deal with issues and put a corrective and preventive actions in place and monitor the implementation, okay? And this should help you, greatly to be ready for when there is a real incident happening.
Thank you. John?
Okay, I don't think there's any one specific scenario that has worked better than others, but the common theme through successful scenarios has really been making it appropriate to the organisation. So it has to be relative, it has to be something that they can relate to and understand, and developing the scenarios so that it is very much localised to them. And that's really helped the buy-in from crisis management teams, incident management teams, executives, in working through and going through the scenarios and how they would respond, and making it as interactive as possible so that you get full participation. What I must probably say is certainly within Oman, there's been a lot of focus, I suppose, over the last few years from a crisis point of view, because they've been suffered from and been affected by Cyclone Gonu, and there was FET, and then you had the sort of like the Arab Spring uprising as well. There's been a lot of focus on those types of scenarios and trying to bring them away from that to realise that there are other potential incidents that can happen. Has had to be put through quite forcefully, really.
I think that's a very interesting point. I think for the banking sector in Europe, they focused for years and years on terrorism of whatever kind, and people rehearsed terrorist incidents over and over and over again. And to some extent, the financial crisis caught banks relatively unawares and unprepared. Even reputational issues really weren't given perhaps the focus that they should have been. And had more banks rehearsed their crisis communication handling and their reputation handling, maybe some of them wouldn't have got into such problems 2008, 2009. I wrote an article many years ago for the Continuity magazine saying that crisis management was like teaching dance, and that it was all very well if you knew how to waltz, but if all you ever did was practice the waltz, that was no good if your crisis was a tango. Yeah, you actually needed to know how to do a bit of tango as well as waltzing and as well as doing some jive. And I think people get comfortable with waltzing because they do it all the time. So thank you for bringing that up. Margaret has raced to the mic here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. It's important to remember that everyone who's involved in an incident is human, and that something's also going through their mind. And I did something recently with some executives at eBay, and I think it was quite insightful, because what I was trying to say to them is, during an incident, depending on what type of an incident it is, you might be personally impacted as well. So part of your brain's going to be thinking about my own concerns for, say, my family, my safety. And then as you climb up the corporate ladder, you've got a lot more responsibilities on your shoulders. So you've got to manage across, you've got to manage down, and you've got to manage up. And that's a lot going on for them at any given point in time as you're working through an incident. And the other thing that's critical is to really listen to what everybody's saying, because if somebody's really wanting to share something with you, it could be a very good idea. So let them take the moment to speak. And also listen to some of the people who do the job every day. I sometimes think during a disaster they don't get an opportunity to talk, but they're the ones who do it day in, day out. And they might be the ones that have the solution that will really make it work for your organization.
Okay, just stay with the mic and tell us about that first point about busy, stressed executives needing support. What does that look like for you?
Well, I was doing it for the even higher up ones. For me, the biggest concern in California is, of course, earthquakes. And so that's what I was trying to base it on, is if we have an earthquake in California, chances are that their personal lives are going to be heavily impacted. And you still need to help get the organization back on its feet as well. So what I was trying to help them is, you might not be performing at your top best because you're so much thinking about your family. And it's okay to maybe delegate some things that you normally don't think you should delegate. Or you might need to just go to your boss and say, I can't deal with this right now because I've got too much going on in my personal life. And that's okay, because the one thing that we value at eBay are our employees. And we constantly say our employees are a critical component of making this organization work. And if an employee is so severely impacted because of something happening in their personal life, they might not be able to fully contribute to supporting the incident.
And that's a good point. There was a story I heard years ago, and it's urban myth, I think, but it was a good story at the time. One of the hurricanes in Florida going back into the 90s, and one of the big telecommunication companies said to their chief engineer, all our lines are down, we've got no phone coverage, we need you here now. And his response was, my house has been wrecked, my wife is dead, my baby is in hospital, I'm not coming. To which their response apparently was, if you're not here in 30 minutes, you're fired. To which he said, have a nice life, and went off to do the things he had to do. And you can all think of 50 ways that company could have helped that engineer, who was a critical part of their recovery, 50 ways that they could have helped him come and do his job to help them. Can we drive you somewhere? Can we send you some help? Can we send a nurse to go and sit with your baby? Can we, whatever. And out of all the possible options, they surely picked the worst possible option. And that, if that story is true, as I say, I believe it to be, but I can't verify it. That was a lose situation instead of something that could have been at least a partial win for some of them. But you're right, we perhaps often underestimate the human impact, although we say it all the time. Our people are our most important asset, but whether we live that through or not, I'm not clear. So thank you for that. John, what can we add to that? You've still got the mic, which is why I'm looking at you, unless anybody else can add to that. What about looking after people? How well do firms, not just here generally, do people pay enough attention to their human assets in teaching them, training them, supporting them when it happens?
No, I don't think so. It's an undervalued activity within a lot of our organisations, especially in our field. There predominantly always seem to be budget constraints, time constraints. What I've found certainly is that something like business continuity, training and awareness and time away from the normal day-to-day job is low priority compared to other training and awareness. How do you get around that? I don't know, there's lots of different routes you can take to generating awareness and providing training. Some of which works in some organisations, doesn't work in others. I suppose horses for courses, really, whatever works in whichever organisation.
What about recovery solutions themselves and the people considerations of that? I mean, I don't know how. I know that in this region there isn't the network of third-party recovery sites that there might be in the States and in Europe, etc. So people are typically using internal resources to plan for recovery. Can anyone give me a feel? How far apart are they? Are they 20 kilometres? Are they 100 kilometres away? Khalid, do you move people within buildings internally, or is that not your recovery strategy? The reason I'm asking is to try and feel, have we actually considered whether people will do what we want them to do? If we're saying you're going to move 400 kilometres for the next 6 months.
I think at the beginning you will find a little bit challenge because the level of awareness is low. The people think that business continuity is not something that they should be doing. I mean, this is not my job. I mean, but the more you educate the staff, the more you are getting in higher level on the maturity of the BCM, the more the people will be more accepting, different role, different contribution within the business continuity. I remember like 4 years ago, as I mentioned, some people don't come to the test for BCB, or they said we are busy. Today, like when I leave them like for 2 or 3 months, they catch me in the corridor and said, when are we going to do the test? Or, okay, what's the next in BCB? So it's become like part of the organization culture embedded within, because the plan we have done, the type of awareness, the education, the training, okay, the people became more, easier to approach with the, going through the life cycle, and the longer you are doing this, you will get more, collaboration from the staff.
So that they'll understand it more and contribute more the more we help educate them. And
you don't
explain.
need to rock the boat. I mean, you need to take it as a transition. It is evolution. It will take like time. You need to consider the human nature, the culture, the people attitude, so many things. I mean, but if you came just want, it's not coming an overnight. I mean, it will take, it is a journey. It is a journey, and that's why we call it a program. It's not a project. And every year will be something new. Every year you will build a new capability, new competencies. So even in all level, even the CEO, the all C-level, senior management, we have a dedicated only program only for the senior management, where we give them a crisis management training, crisis communication plan, communicating with social media, all these things like for the more senior management level. And we keep repeating. I mean, it's not just a one-time exercise. We keep doing this like year after year after year until it is people, become part of what they think. Yeah.
Thank you. Sesh.
Yeah, I can't agree with him more. See, actually, we speak of three attributes of human beings: faith, belief, and attitude. You have faith in something, you start building your belief on that. And as you go along, this belief becomes an attitude, it becomes a characteristic in you. Now, this is a time-consuming process. As you rightly said, it's not going to happen overnight. At the end of the day, people have to realize that it is people's preparedness for people's safety, for people's continuity, and your business continuity. At the end of the day, it all revolves around people. So unless they realize that it is their own innate responsibility to respond to this and save their own life and save their business, I think that attitude has to be built internally, and that's a process. It takes its own time.
Just a quick one.
Yeah.
I think when the chips are down and somebody's got to make a choice between family or the organisation they work for, predominantly, most people are going to be choosing family. And so depending upon the incident will depend upon the requirements, I suppose, for the organisations to deal with the humanistic nature of impact nature from that incident. But organisations can always do a lot to support people, and they'll get long-term rewards from that, whether it's in terms of the business recovering, continuing, developing, growing, whether it's in terms of staff commitment and their willingness and to recognise how far the organisation's gone to support them in a time of need. Those things do get recognised, and they are rewarded back to the organisation over time.
But we've got to show the employees that.
Definitely.
That we're prepared, that we care, that we've thought about it. And going back to the hurricane example, just telling them you will because I say so probably isn't the right way of going about it at a time of crisis. That there's probably a lot of steps beforehand to help build that faith and to change that mindset to bring people along.
And one of the obstacles that we most probably have in the region is developing the level of resilience within organisations to enable them to take that view and that approach with staff as well, because there's perhaps a lot of dependency upon individuals' knowledge, perhaps things not documented or proceduralised as well as...
And have survived, etc. So Qatar Airways has that, Emirates would have that, Oman Air would have that. And never having explored that before, I wonder whether, in fact, it's possible to extend that so that companies like Linda's could call upon other companies who already have that capability and set up some sort of joint arrangement that says, I don't know, something happens within the Abu Dhabi Police Authority, you know what, we'll call Etihad and see what support they can give us from their trained volunteers. Maybe there's some cross assistance that could be sourced.
I would like just to make the comments about the hotline. We need to be very careful about the hotline because we are talking about crisis, and during crisis, the communication network sometime it will be down. So what we do use in our company is to use a satellite phone. Satellite phone, it is very good to be used during the crisis because there is no dependency on a service provider, which is for the normal communication network. And we have like few satellite phone, one with the head of business continuity, one with HCM head, CFO, and Chief Operating Officer. We share the same communication and receive, calls from, or call different people. This will reduce the risk, okay? Even if your alert notification system, sometimes also through the web-based tool, sometimes also the internet will be down. So, I mean, the best case scenario is to use the satellite phone, okay? Just in case, this network communication is up and down or not available all the time. So you can reach some of your staff and they can reach you as well.
Sure, thank you. Oh, you've lost the phone.
So there's a couple of things I want to talk about. With the crisis management in the United States, you have to be very careful who you put on a phone call because, as you know, we'd like to sue a lot in the United States. And so you do need to make sure you've got trained people who are taking the calls because of the types of questions that are going to be coming in. And I do think it's in our best interest as business continuity professionals to really have some of these tough discussions with our crisis management teams because it might be that special set of policies that you don't want to put out on your intranet, but they're there for these types of circumstances. That's one thing that we're doing is planning, pre-planning, again, for something that we hope we never have to use, but having a policy that will address some of these tough issues that might need to get invoked. It's better to do it now while there's some thought in it. Still might need to get tweaked when the actual incident occurs. And then the other thing I just wanted to share with everyone is when 9/11 occurred, I was working in Boston for financial services, and many institutions that are in Boston also have offices in Manhattan. And what occurred there is, of course, people's homes were okay, but we had, no financial sector left in Manhattan. Many business continuity recovery work area sites were invoked, and it expanded a large region throughout New England, New York, down various routes. And what they found is they had people who were willing to go if they were single, but most people were married and they had working spouses and children, so they couldn't go for extended periods of time because somebody needed to be there to take care of their families. So what they became very creative in doing is scheduling of Chris might be able to go next week, Monday through Wednesday, but then he had to get back because he needed to take care of the kids and his wife needed to go to work for her recovery site. And that was one thing that, they learned. And then again, these were really stressed people or depressed people because, they talked to Joe every day to place a trade and Joe was no longer there. So that's where I'm saying sometimes you have to get creative, think outside the box on ways to accommodate your employees, and also just realize that they might not be able to work a full day after an incident's occurred because I'm sure those first few days they had a lot of people that just had to walk away from phones and then get back on later on because Joe wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, and very stressful. Mahmoud? Oh, I thought you...
I have a question. Do you think our top management in the Middle East are mature enough to talk with them in some certain risks we could face, or we still have some red zones we can talk about? You got my question? Okay. Do you think our top management in the Middle East are mature enough to talk with them about some risks we could face
Yeah. Is senior management...
It is difficult, question. Because generally speaking, I cannot judge, top management. It's different top management every company. There is some top management in your company is different from his company, from my company. So, but I think I'll just talk about our company. I think yes, we are, on top of the things, and our board as well, and we do usually a risk assessment every year, and we are aware about risk around the region, and we go beyond today there is uncertainty within the GCC, okay, and we are thinking of this scenario and thinking about our teams and what could be happened if something happened any scenario that could affect the business and the people. We are doing this, but I don't know about others, but I assume people are, to come to the level of top management, they must be sure, they are aware of so many things. The issue here, always, there is everybody in different levels. So maybe what caused your perception, because you see only what you have seen, but the higher the level, your manager, they will see bigger picture. So I would believe my manager will see bigger picture than me. The CEO will see bigger picture than, so what my boss sees. So I think so. But what caused the perception? Because it's a perception, just maybe, or you see just, but I think they are aware.
So you think they are asking themselves the hard questions and giving answers to those hard questions?
No, I think it is not an issue that is restricted to Middle East alone. Globally, I think selling BCM in boardroom is a big deal, not a joke. But certainly one size does not fit all. So you have to probably customize the arguments in favor of BCM according to your local environment. The top management have their own priorities. This is not probably one of them. The main task that is attributed to the BCM leader is to make sure that this becomes one of the priority items for the top management. How you do it you have to really customize it to your local needs, local environment, local situation, local complexities, and your own business environment. For them, their risk appetite, you have to go and sensitize their risk appetite. You have to probably scare them out of the wits. If that's what needs to be done, that's what you need to do. So I think this is not an issue, as I said earlier, it's a global issue. But in the Middle East, I'm sure you will definitely find some very specific points to scare them out of the wits. That's what you have to use in your favor. And sensitize their risk appetite. You have to tell them this is much bigger than your risk appetite. You can take so much of risk, but this is posing much more risk than that. That's what needs to be done.
So we have to scare our managers more and get them to think. And John, I know you've got the mic. I'm going to cut you off, I'm afraid. I'm going to end that there. Thank the panel for their contribution. Thank you for all your comments and thoughts on that. We're going to take a 20-minute break for some coffee. And then we'll come back at 3:35 for the final two sessions. So thank you very much.